Well, then the fundamental thing then is to realize then that there's great science to show that we are not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our lives, and we're not doomed by our genes, that we're marvels of adaptability and change. Now, here's the challenge, though. The challenge is that most people wait for crisis or diagnosis before they make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? So then if your personality creates your personal reality and you become conscious that in lack or in separation, the game to play when you're living in three-dimensional reality is that you have to do something to get what you want. So then you have the thought of wanting something, right? You want a new career, you want to succeed in something, you want a new relationship, you want to heal. That thought of whatever that experience is, your mind actually predicts it somewhere in the future. And you say, if I work really hard, if I sacrifice a certain number of things, if I save a lot of money, I can go on this vacation or have this experience. And some people wait for the experience to occur. And when the experience occurs, the payoff is the emotion in three-dimensional reality. But the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it, between cause and effect, between one point of consciousness, I'm conscious that I'm competitive, and another point of consciousness, can I change that, is called time. So everything in three-dimensional reality takes time, and we experience separation until the event happens, and then we feel the emotion. Well, that's great. But the fundamental quality of a person's personality who's competitive, once they have that experience, then they're going to compete for the next thing they want. And there's nothing wrong with that, because when we're matter trying to change matter, of course we're going to use the principles. We're going to control, we're going to predict, we're going to compete, we're going to fight for, we're going to work harder, we're going to manipulate, we're going to do anything we can to produce an outcome. And when we have the experience then produces the emotion. Well, the question is then people become so reliant on the experience to change their emotional state. They need something outside of them to change their internal state. And so if I said to somebody, hey, why are you so unhappy today? They would say, I'm unhappy because of that person or that circumstance. Yeah. And what that really means is that that person or that circumstance is actually controlling the way you feel and the way you think. And anything that controls the way we feel and the way we think, we're victims to that circumstance. In other words, we're victims to our environment, and our response to the environment actually weakens the organism. It actually takes the body's vital life force and turns it into emergency. And you tap those resources. Okay, so then that's cause and effect. You're waiting for something, you create something, and so we're in the plane of doing, and you master some skills, you get educated, you make the right choices, you get the right counseling or the right advice, and you could actually succeed in this world. Well, that's great, but the time between you getting it and the thought of it is a lot of separation, right? And so what if, like you said, okay, what would a new personality who's not competitive live like? How would I have to think? How would a person who's no longer competitive have to think? And you start thinking about how to think. And the act of actually with intention or attention actually begins to install new circuitry in your brain, new hardware. Keep doing it, and it becomes like a software program. That becomes the new voice in your head that says, ease up, there's another way to do it. Then if you said, how am I going to be in my life when I open my eyes? How am I going to live today, one day, one lifetime, as if I wasn't competitive? Okay, well, I may have to read a little bit and learn a little about how to do that, but I can find somebody that did that. Obviously, someone has. If you closed your eyes and you rehearsed mentally how you're going to be on a Zoom call, how you're going to be with your colleagues, how you're going to be in your relationships, mental rehearsal, when you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between the real-life experience and what you're imagining. And the research on mental rehearsal says you can install neurological hardware in your brain to look like you've already done it. That's already been experienced. Now your brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. Keep priming the brain with those instructions, and the hardware will become a software program. Now you'll start behaving that way. Now here's the hard part, which you accomplished. Can I teach my body emotionally what it would feel like to no longer be competitive, to be in love with life and know that everything's going to work out, or that I'm resourceful or intelligent or whatever it is? Can I bring up the feeling of what the competitive, non-competitive person or a person who's mastered that feels like. If you can teach your body emotionally what that feels like before the experience, then it would make sense then, if you could do that enough times, you can condition your body emotionally to begin to change with that thought and that feeling, with that image and that emotion. And so then the person becomes a new personality and changes from the old personality. And our research shows when you do that, not only do you change your circuitry, the way your brain works, the way your heart works, your gene expression, your immune system, but the side effect of that a lot of times is there's very profound biological changes that take place in the person's health. And you say, how did you do that? And they'll tell you, that disease exists in the old personality. I'm literally somebody else. So if you have evidence and testimony, which we do have, that it's possible to change, and we have great evidence in scientific research that we're doing, evidence becomes the loudest voice. And that person who stands on the stage and tells the story of their personal transformation, and they're speaking the truth, they're the 4-minute mile. And it's a new level of consciousness that says, I don't need anything outside of me to change my internal state. I could actually self-regulate and change my internal state. And the more I understand what I'm doing based on the model of science and why I'm doing it, made simply, then the how gets easier because you assign meaning to it. And when you assign meaning to it, you switch on that prefrontal cortex and it will find value in the act. If you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it, it's left to conjecture, to superstition, to dogma. And so then lighting a match in a dark place and taking a look at what aspect of yourself, if you want to be happy, then the first thing you have to do is stop being unhappy. You got to become conscious of those thoughts that make you feel bad and the memories that go along with it and the emotions of that. And disentangling from that program takes a lot of energy and a lot of awareness. Chronic diseases require a lifestyle change. And change is an interesting concept. So the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, get ready, because you're going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. You're not going to be in the known. You're stepping out into the unknown. You're doing something differently. And the body, which has been conditioned to be the mind, the servant is now the master. So the body loves the familiar known. It loves the same suffering. It loves the same pain. It loves the same unworthiness. It's been conditioned that way for years on end. It really is running the show. So the moment you step out into the unknown, the body goes, wait a second, I'd rather feel guilty than this feeling of the unknown because I can't predict my future. So the body starts influencing the mind, and then we start to hear this chatter in our head that says, well, I can start tomorrow. You know, tomorrow's a better day. You really don't feel like it today. Why don't you just have one piece of cake? You're a loser. It's your parents' fault. It's your ex's fault. It's your culture's fault, whatever it is. And if we accept, believe, and surrender to that thought as if it's the truth, that's an old circuit in the brain. That thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, which will create the same experience, which will produce the same feeling or emotion. The person says, well, this feels right to me. No, that feels familiar.